Nintendo Switch Online just had, I think, its best update ever. And it's kind of for a weird reason. Previously, we had a lot of people, downplay every single Nintendo release that came out, right? Every Nintendo Switch Online, we had people saying that, like, oh, I pirated that, I emulated this, I did this, I stole it, like, this game isn't very good, like, they're only putting out shovelware, where are the good games, Nintendo? Where are the obscure games, Nintendo? Like, I bought this in Virtual Console years ago. Like, it's just been, like, a nonstop, like, narrative since, like, 2017, since the very beginning, since before the service even launched. I can tell you that people like Video Game Awesome, worst channel ever, or like trying to like downplay this service. And now, years later, this is by far the best gaming streaming service there is. And nobody wants to admit it. Nobody wants to talk about it at all. And I'm just going to talk a little bit today about what makes the service so great, or more specifically, what makes this specific update so great, and why Nintendo Switch Online is an extremely competitive service, the best on the industry. And I do think a big part of it is the versatility of the emulation. This is not something people want to acknowledge, but the gyro controls on Nintendo Switch Online do indeed allow for motion-controlled gaming. So as a result of that, Kirby Tilt and Tumble is, for the first time ever, able to be replicated on modern Nintendo hardware, right? Emulators probably like require you to use buttons, which kind of ruins the entire experience because this is supposed to be like a motion-controlled thing. But like Kirby Tilt and Tumble is an incredibly engaging, fun to play, fresh, original Kirby game. Honestly, like going by what little I've played of it, it might go on to be my favorite Kirby game ever. I was really, really surprised with how fun, fresh, and inventive it is. And this is a game I probably would have written off as shovelware if it wasn't released on NSO, right? I may not have bought it on 3DS, right? I probably wouldn't have picked it up on Game Boy Color, but like because it's available for free on the service, I now have the ability to play this game whenever I want, right? And it's not alone; it's surrounded by like obscure games that I've never even heard of before, like The Immortal on NES, like Beyond Oasis on Sega Genesis, like Psycho Dream on Super Nintendo. The Super Nintendo one has Super Valis 4, and I'm playing the original Valis games on the Valis collection on Switch. So that's been like a really interesting experience. I've become a big fan of Valis. And like this is the definitive way to experience Nintendo's history, right? Like this is the best way to experience classic gaming right now. And because of the way this service works, because of like the drip feed, we are constantly getting new, interesting games. Sometimes ones that like a lot of people haven't really had the chance to experience. Case in point, Harvest Moon. Harvest Moon was released this past update, and immediately the haters were trying to release statements saying like, oh, why would you want to play this? We have Stardew Valley. This is old, outdated horseshit. And I laughed at them because I'm well aware that Harvest Moon was always better than Stardew Valley. It is nothing more than like a cheap copycat. But playing Harvest Moon Super Nintendo for the first time, the 1997 original release, you really get an appreciation for like its artistry, its originality, its innovativeness, and like its general design. Because this was the first farming sim of its kind ever made, right? This game was like trend-setting. I think both the developers of The Sims and Animal Crossing cited this as a major influence for their work, and you can really see it here. And Harvest Moon is a bit more difficult in those games since you have to like balance your time and like manage your farm, and like there's actual like effort involved, and it is incredibly fun, right? This is the first time I've played the game ever, and I've always been a fan of Harvest Moon, but like I got into the series with 64, and I've been like dipping in and out since then. Like it's been really difficult to find the good games in this series because I think most people agree they stopped getting better after the Game Boy Advance one, right? There's been like Rune Factory was great before the dark days, but like I've fallen out of like Harvest Moon for a long time. So going back and playing the original and like appreciating what it did, like taking in its legacy, at a time where I wasn't even sure like if I was really a fan of the series anymore, it really made me realize just how much I really care about Harvest Moon, how much I love this franchise and this game. And that is something that I think a lot of people really need to understand, is that the classic Nintendo library is filled with games like this. Games that you don't necessarily think back on all that fondly or haven't played all that much or haven't had the chance to experience. Stuff like Pokemon Snap, stuff like GoldenEye, stuff like, the Mario parties. You probably haven't played every single game in the Super Nintendo, N64, or NES library. And as a result of that, you are doubtlessly going to find something that you've never played before, right? Like right now, for the first time, I'm playing Wario Land 3. It's been a phenomenal experience. I love that game. It's probably going to go on to be one of my favorite Game Boy games ever. Game Boy Color games ever, excuse me. Like, playing this service has really made me realize just how much I love the Game Boy Color aesthetic, how I love that visual design, the audio cues, the sprite work. It's just so gorgeous. I love it. I think people are really underestimating just how these releases are resonating with people, because people see Harvest Moon get released on this. Like, the people who grew up playing Harvest Moon, they get excited. Like, they go, wow, this is getting re-released. Like, Natsume and the other company made up. Like, wow, I can't believe this happened. And so you get this interest in kind of real enthusiasm for playing this game again on this new piece of hardware. It's legit really exciting. Playing these games alongside a bunch of other people who may be experienced players or may be doing it for the first time. It is a really great experience. And there's also one final thing that I noticed, something that I don't think a lot of people have picked up on, is that Nintendo Switch Online is indeed getting Japanese-only games. Mystery Tower from this update is indeed a Japanese-only release that never saw its way to the States. And currently, right now, I think the Japanese exclusive games are relegated to NES games, right? But it's only a matter of time, right? I think it's very likely that eventually we're going to get fully translated ROMs of obscure Super Famicom classics, maybe the original Live Alive or some of this other stuff that never came out over here, Terranigma or whatever. It's very possible that we might see a lot of obscure Japanese RPGs finally get translated, finally get an official release, finally find an audience by getting released through this service. And of course, we haven't really seen a lot of that yet. It's only a handful of games at this point, but they are coming out, right? This is going to be a major draw for the console, I think, and something that I think will continue to grow with time is this the audience for classic games, the games that came out in the 80s and 90s, they are going to be coming to Nintendo hardware. So this is going to be the place to go to play this kind of thing. And it's very possible that Nintendo might have it in their contract that these exclusive new localizations might be exclusive to Nintendo Switch Online. So you might not see these games come out on any other service ever. Maybe. Obviously, that's kind of a reach, but that's just kind of my speculation on the subject. And it's probably a big reason why a lot of these games are so slow to come out, is that Nintendo's hashing this out and making sure that these games cannot leave the service under any circumstances. And as they release new and new games, I think eventually we're going to see every single NES, Super Nintendo game and N64 game on this service. And I think that's eventually going to expand to GameCube and Wii as well. Wii emulation is already possible on Nintendo Switch, and I believe we've already seen a port of a handful of Wii games. Of course, Super Mario Galaxy is on there through the 3D All Stars collection, and I think a handful of others got ported as well. There's a lot to be excited about for the future of Nintendo Switch Online, I think. Obscure games are getting some coverage. Blaster Master on Game Boy Color got released, and that's something I would really love to play if I can ever get through all the other Blaster Master games I need to get through. We've seen so much. There's so much to look forward to. There's so much to be excited by. I cannot imagine anyone criticizing this service ever again.